Hello and welcome to another video and podcast from Fantasy Football Scout. Today it's all about Sky Sports Fantasy Football with £50,000 up for grabs for the winner. More specifically, it's about the overhaul. It's still going on. Now, last week we had a good look at our overhaul teams and we considered some of the players, some of the strategies for addressing that. For those that don't know or are new to Sky, and they're used to FPL, the overhaul is essentially an enforced wildcard that all Sky managers can play before Gameweek 6. You can choose not to, but it's a free wildcard, so why wouldn't you? So last week we had a look at all of those options and stuff. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at see what further developments have happened with our team and some of the things we need to watch out for. And I know, Luke, you've got some stats as well to throw our way, which would be quite interesting. We'll also tackle your questions and we'll have a look at those captains that are coming up for game week 6. It's not game week 5. Sky are still doing that thing where there's no matches during international break. They just call it a game week anyway. So we're skipping game week 5 and game week 6 carries on. So let's start with having a look at your team, because this will be a good way to find out sort of what your thinking is so far and some of the issues that you're still kind of toying with when you finalise your team. So just for the benefit of those listening on the podcast version, we've got Patricio in goal. Chilwell has come in since last time in Lamptey and Dallas in a 3-5-2, and then you've got De Bruyne, Antonio, Barnes, Grealish, Rodriguez, and up front Kane and Salah. So there are a lot of similarities last time, but I noticed Chilwell there, and I understand you've got some money in the bank with this one. So do you want to kind of talk us through your thinking?
Yeah, I mean, again, this is not set in stone. There are a few players that have been in and out of my team so often, it's unbelievable. Really struggling with the goalkeeper. It's basically between Patricio, Martinez, and possibly Guita.
Yeah.
And I keep chopping and changing. I'll tell you the main reason. I've got £3 million in the bank. So if you're looking at my team thinking, where's the money gone? That's probably why. The general plan here, really, that I've got is Grealish at 8.5 million. I can then transfer him to anyone up to the value of 11.5 million. So that pretty much gives me access to every player in the game that I would need. The only one that's slightly out of possibility of getting is Aguero, but obviously I do have Salah and Kane there, so I could find a way via them if I needed to. But I like that idea of kind of having that rotatable player. So the idea with Grealish is that he's got a pretty good game if I remember to start. It's okay. Obviously he's banging form. He's the hot property at the moment. So he's away to Leicester on Sunday. So that's a pretty good game, I think.
Yeah.
Then he's obviously got that Friday game, which is home to Leeds, and they're the only team playing. So he's the prime captain there. So to me, that's almost a 3-for-1-ish on another player, because you've obviously got the one game he plays there, then you've got the game as a captain as well that you can kind of count as 2 as the best captain.
Yeah.
And then, for example, you could move him on to virtually any player I can get now apart from Aguero. So then I could go to Jimenez, who is then at home to Newcastle, and then Wolves the following Friday. I have a Friday game at home to Palace. So then changing to Jimenez makes sense, because then I get Jimenez for a couple of games. And if I kind of just use that spot and I'm quite happy with the rest of my team, it never quite works out like this, does it? But it's nice to have that plan, I think, where therefore every week I can look, right, who can I swap to get 2 games or a good captain out of that spot if I need to. Sometimes I might not use it and I'll just leave that player in. But that's the general theme of this team. So if I was to trim Patricio down a little bit, that would enable that Aguero move. So that's in my mind constantly. It would also allow me to upgrade Lamptey, who is the other player in my team I'm still not sure on. I mean, firstly, I don't know if he's fit or not, which would be interesting to find out. But second of all, I think Ben White at 6.3 million. I wonder if he could be a more consistent returner, as obviously Lamptey has heavily relied on his assists so far. Yeah. And Ben White has actually got tier 2 passing in 2 of his games. So long term, will Ben White be a better option? What I'd love to have in that spot really is one of these Wolves defenders that are so cheap, but I just don't know who's going to play. So it just feels like too much of a risk. And that would obviously allow me to move Patricio as well.
Yeah.
The other thing that's been eating me alive really is this Chelsea coverage. I really want a Chelsea player for some reason. I can't really explain. I mean, the fixtures are good. You don't necessarily need them, but this whole Pulisic, Chilwell, Werner kind of thing, and even Zuma at 7.8 million, I kind of like one of them. And there's just too many good midfielders. I want Pulisic, and obviously I could move Grealish to him at any point, but I feel like I need a constant presence in my team, and I don't want to use that as my rotatable spot. And I'm just not willing to lose any of the other midfielders, so I don't know where to fit it in. At the moment, it's Chilwell, who again I don't know whether he's fit, so this could change again. And those are the kind of three spots: the keeper, Lamberty, Chilwell, that I'm most uncertain about really at the moment, and are subject to obviously information. Likewise with De Bruyne, if he comes out and says he's injured for the game, I've got a decision to make there, as many other managers have. So yeah, waiting very much on team news. This international break has not been kind to us.
No, I mean, that's a really good strategy, having 3 million in a bank. It's so flexible. You can get anyone. So say, for example, you're quite happy keeping Grealish, but say Antonio gets injured. Pay bingo. Yes. That 3 million. You can upgrade to a very credible striker, very good forward. You can replace as a midfielder, or you can move down perhaps to a Liverpool defender and move to a 4-4-2. Yeah. It's hugely flexible. I look at that team. So obviously Kane and Salah can pretty much be anyone you kind of want. You've got that cheap defence, but you've got that 3 million to upgrade wherever you want.
So that's kind of the internal struggle. It's like, do I keep that cheap defence, which allows me so much flexibility? So one of the team variations I've got, I can switch Antonio or Barnes to even Aguero if I sort of get Konsa in defence and then say Martinez, for example, and double up on Villa. So yeah, it's like, obviously the more expensive defence is probably going to get you more points over the season, but then causes me to have less flexibility moving forward. And right now, I kind of like being flexible, such is the nature of injuries and COVID, and fixtures changing and everything.
So, I mean, I'll put my team up now, because there's similarities, but there are differences. And some of them address some of the issues you were talking about, but also some of the things you talk about present issues for my team, particularly lack of flexibility. So I'll put my team up now, and we're looking at Patricio, Robertson. So you can see where I've spent the money. So I've got 0.3 in the bank. I've got 3-4-3, Robertson, Konsa and Dallas at the back with Patricio as goalkeeper. In my midfield, I've got De Bruyne, Antonio, Grealish. As you said, Grealish looks the standout captain pick, even though they're playing Leeds and Dallas are playing in that future game. I've got Pulisic in. I've just got my heart set on him, and I also tempted to move the captain to him. We'll come to that shortly. But against Southampton, if De Bruyne is injured or a doubt, I think suddenly Chelsea assets become the standout captaincy for that day, unless you want to back Salah in a Merseyside derby. And I'm not sure I want to back Salah in a Merseyside derby. Up front, I've got Kane, Calvert-Lewin instead of Rodriguez, and Salah. So the options for me there are the challenges. So it's either Calvert-Lewin or Rodriguez. Obviously, what I've done there is I've gone for the more expensive option because I can move down to Rodriguez, but I can't move up to Calvert-Lewin from Rodriguez. I think Calvert-Lewin's shots, the amount of shots he's taking, the amount of goals he's scoring, I think he's just going to chip away and be a good source of points. Rodriguez, I'm not going to have a pop at him. He's great, and I would like to have him as well. But at the moment, I'm just looking for the more expensive one because I can move down if I need to. Pulisic is there. Pulisic can become Barnes, for example, and he can become a whole number of other. He could become Rodriguez even. So I'm looking at that flexibility there, and one of the reasons I wanted Pulisic is because you can move down from a Pulisic, but you can't move up, and he is injury prone over his career, short career. He's very young, so that's why I was looking there. Grealish, as I said, great captaincy option. Antonio's just a lock. De Bruyne, if fit, is definitely a lock. If it comes out he's out for a month, then obviously I will have to think again. And Salah and Kane, I think, are locks for me. Dallas, I want a Liverpool defender. I cannot go into this game with whatever 39 transfers I've got left without a Liverpool defender. I know I'm going to want one within the next. When's the next Oval? Like March, February?
Yeah, probably.
I cannot fathom a universe where I'm not going to want a Liverpool defender from now until February or March.
Yeah, scary thought.
And so once I've got, I think what we've seen the last 4 weeks, Robertson is matching, if not bettering, Van Dijk. So I'm quite happy there. Konsa's my Lamptey Last time we spoke, I wasn't happy with Lamptey 100%. Konsa, I'm also not happy about because I've also got Grealish. But then if Grealish moves on, I've got Villa coverage there, nice and cheap. And it's, as you said, the goalkeeper, the Patricio, Guita we mentioned. If there are to be many more Friday night matches, Palace are prime contenders. So Wolves, teams that aren't playing in Europa, because those matches tend to be on the Thursday. So obviously Friday is free for those that aren't involved in those types of matches. So yeah, I do. And Palace have a great run of fixtures coming up.
Yeah, strongly in my thoughts.
If I was minded, I think Zaha is actually a credible option for these fixtures, and you can move him on, but have in mind to move him on. But I don't think he's a bad fixture, a bad player for these fixtures. But yeah, Guita's probably the one. But as you said, what do we do with Wolves? I'm gonna need Wolves. Jimenez is a sort of a goal, few extra points kind of guy a week. I want in that role. I want a Calvert Lewin who's going to get me a brace or something.
What we really need is this. If someone could tell us what the back five for Wolves is going to be moving forward to 38 games and who's going to be playing the left wing back spot, I would snap the hands off to get it. But it's just so hard to know who it is off the bat. I mean, I'd like to think it's probably Marcel when he comes back fit, given the way he started ahead of everyone.
What is he, 6'3" or something?
Yes, he's very cheap. Yeah, he's 6'3". I mean, this kid they've signed is 5.5 million. I'm just going to find his name because I think it's quite tricky, at least for me anyway. 8 Nori? Hyphen?
Yeah.
He's got a very big reputation. He's 5.5 million. The thing is, he's a kid, and I wonder if it's similar to the Vinagre thing where he'll be back up to Marcel.
Yeah, and just eased him.
I think the safe option, really, if you are going to go for a Wolves defender, is probably Saiss. But then even with him, it's like, could he then drop out to accommodate these guys if Marcel goes left wing back? Exactly. And Saiss has had some up and down games. He's looked very good in some games and very bad in others. So then you got Samado at 7.8, and I think, well, he probably is the, aside from Bolly, is probably one of the most nailed ones with some sort of attacking threat. However, although he looks good going forward, I'm not sure he's actually got much of an end product. He's got a bit of a reputation of not having much of one.
I think those that I decided in my squad at the moment not to go for that sort of 7.58 million defender. It's either Liverpool defender or go cheaps chips. But if I was minded to, Samado would be the one, and then that would free up that goalkeeper slot for Guita. But also, I was looking at that price range, and Castagna at Leicester. Now, if we want a Leicester coverage and you don't want to get Barnes or don't have room for Barnes, Castagna is probably the next best one because he is nailed on. He has got the occasional goal and assist in him. But as I said, at the moment, there's so much choice in. I mean, remember we were here this time last season, midfield, and we were going, KDB and whoever. Now it's like, I want 20 midfield slots. There's so many I want.
I'm going to throw another name out there as well that I don't think anyone's considering, and I'd say don't start with him, but I wouldn't be surprised that he does well over this sort of next 7 or 8 weeks, and that's Patrick van Aanholt.
Yes.
Because you've just mentioned it there. They've got very good fixtures.
Yeah.
They are likely to have some Friday captain games where most people may not even have a Palace player, but if they do, it's unlikely to be one with that much potential. And Van Aanholt was kind of on penalties when he was playing. I think he took a penalty when Zaha was on the pitch. And he's got a massive goal threat anyway. We know this about him. He can score up to 6-7 goals a season if he stays fit the whole season. And then when you add in this new tackle bonus and stuff for fullbacks, he suddenly becomes a quite appealing option. He's 7.9 million, which is a little bit pricey. And I wouldn't start with him, but I wouldn't be surprised if we start thinking about him. All he has to do is score a couple of goals.
I think for those considering perhaps a 4-4-2, and think of someone like Van Aanholt as a midfielder, really, because of the potential for attacking returns. He was my differential for the next 4 game weeks on the Scoutcast this week for FPL, but it applies equally to Sky as well. If he's starting, he's great. He's got great fixtures. He does better against the so-called minnows. He's got Brighton up next if he's playing for that. He said on Twitter that he's back. Whether his boss thinks he's back, but he thinks he's back. All points to Van Aanholt time. This is Van Aanholt time, and they've got such good fixtures going right the way up till well into December, and at that price, he can become a whole bunch of other players who will emerge at that time.
Yeah, it's a teaser. So I won't be starting there myself, but I wouldn't be surprised if I don't regret it. It might be one for the B teams, the guys who are being a bit rogue. Just stick them
Yeah.
in there.
Well, I mean, speaking of B teams, I'll be try and keep it to our A teams, but I will mention in my B team, so I'll try and do something a bit different. And basically, I've gone without Kane and gone for Son instead, and that frees up enough money to have a midfield of De Bruyne, Antonio, Pulisic, Fernandes, and Rodriguez. And I know that B team is going to perform better because that midfield is so mouth-wateringly good. What I'm missing is Grealish, but I got Conte in there.
Yeah.
And I got Dallas and Patricio for some of those single game day, or not single game day, like two matches in a day kind of fixtures.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've got some questions on the midfielders and the picks, and we're going to go into some detail there when they come up.
Yeah.
But before we go there, are you happy to me to throw some stats?
Yeah, okay, yeah, let's go. So, what do you want to throw at me?
So on Fantasy Football Scout website in the members area, you can tick this very helpful box called per 90, and basically that does what it says on the tin. It kind of breaks down a player's stats, their sort of contributions, and levels them out to what it would be per 90 minutes on the pitch. So it can be very useful for generally players who've played a lot of games. It's very useful for. Obviously, there might be a player who's played 5 minutes and their stats are inflated as a result. But there's a few names I want to throw out there. So saves made. Who do you think the top key of goalkeeper is for saves made? He's averaging 4.73 saves a game.
Right.
So that is per 90. Sorry. So that is bonus every game.
No, I haven't looked at these, so I'm going by historic. But also it's either I think the Leeds keeper or Darlow at Newcastle.
Ding, ding, ding. What do we have for him, Johnny? Yeah, it's Darlow, 4.73.
Oh. Now, I'll go for historic because I was surprised whenever he has played, he does make a lot of saves. I don't know what that says about the defence, what they think of him. They just run away.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's tricky to know how to take that, isn't it? Because one thing you're thinking they can get spanked here and they're not getting any clean sheets, but at the same time, he's churning out bonus every time he takes to the pitch. Now, we know with Darlow, he's likely to lose his place eventually. So I'm just going to throw a few other names out here that are doing well. Johnston's at 4.53, so very, very close, as you'd expect for a West Brom keeper. So it might still be an option, despite conceding a lot of goals. I'm not going to touch on the ones that have played 1 or 2 games because the next one is actually Adrian, but do not go there.
No.
But the next sort of 2 or 3 that interest me is Ramsdale's actually the next at 3.10. Okay. So still in the frame for making those saves. If the defence can tighten up, he still could end up being that player that we liked. And then interesting for me, and again, I don't know how to take this, Patricio is the next one at 3.09. So obviously, he appeals because he's a Wolves player. He can keep a lot of clean sheets, and he's also getting a lot of the saves, which is great. But then at the same time, should he be making that amount of saves? That's kind of worrying.
Yeah. You expect that for like Nick Pope or something.
Yes. And bang level with him is Guita at 3.09.
Good option.
So Guita and Patricio making those saves, and in teams who historically can get clean sheets in quite predictable games, and that's why I like them. Home to a minnow, you expect Palace to try and churn one out.
So I did have Darlow in my overhaul that we talked about last week, and I sort of thought, I can't have Darlow, but now I think of it, maybe I should have Darlow.
Again, I think they've got pretty good fixtures as well, right? I made that up.
I haven't got any Newcastle coverage. I think
they're another team that can play on Friday.
Yeah, of course they can. Yeah, and I'm thinking with them. Just looking at them, I think I would want Wilson though, if I want Newcastle captaincy coverage on a Friday night game.
Possibly, but you can say for Darlow, I mean, rather than waste I say waste, it's not necessarily a waste, but if you've got Darlow in there, you are going to get some sort of points every game. It's looking like it's 4.73 saves per game. You're looking at 3 or 4 points if they concede. Even up to 5 sometimes, virtually every game. So it's a kind of a nice little safe return there for a crap game.
Well, I think basically if anyone watching and listening, they got Darlow in their side, keep him maybe. If it fits in and you've got coverage for other teams elsewhere. Yeah, surprise option. What about defender stats? Yeah,
so let's go for passes for defenders. So this is per 90. There is one player. He's only actually played 2 games, so that's probably assists you a bit. The last 2, so he didn't start the first 2. And he's averaging 104 passes per 90 minutes, which for the tier levels you only need to have 70, don't you?
What am I
So he's
thinking?
absolutely smashing it out the park.
Okay, well, Chilwell's played one, not
You're on the
two.
right ballpark. It's the correct team.
It's is it Reece James? No, no, it can't be.
No,
Oh, hang on a minute. It'll be. Could it be Silva?
it's Thiago Silva.
It
Yeah,
is Silva at Chelsea. Okay, and how much is Silva now?
I think he's 9.2. Let me just check that.
Ooh,
Actually,
that's a tricky price to take a
Hmm.
punt. But is it a
Let me
punt?
just check. He's 9.2 million. His fitness record's not the best, and obviously Chelsea's defence slightly suspect. The keeper now might be injured as well, which is a worry. But for 104 passes, I mean that's. I don't think it's going to maintain that high. But they were very good for passing last season. Chelsea with, I guess, subpar players in the ball playing department. So Thiago Silva will very much be hitting passing bonus virtually every game.
I mean, that's. I mean, thinking about it, just more than 100 passes, like, and there's 90 minutes in the game. So it's almost it's just constant action there.
Yeah, yeah. So he is. Has the potential for this Van Dijk light thing again. He does. He's one of the names out there.
Okay.
Some other ones on it for. I mean, Garcia was the next highest. He's
Yeah.
only played one game, and I wouldn't touch him with a barge pole. We already had Gabriel in our thoughts.
Yeah.
He's the third with 89 passes on average. Played 3 games. Some of the teams they played probably contributed towards that. And then in fourth place, Azpilicueta, 81 passes, played 3 of the games. So again, there is a Sky favourite. He's come down in price again, and he's getting the passing bonus to go with his tackle bonus, which he often gets as well.
I earmarked him in my post-overall team at the beginning of the season, and then Reece James promptly took his place, and then Azpilicueta got it back. All that equals, I don't know what's going on. And if Azpilicueta was definitely nailed on, I would definitely have him. He's great because he has been great in Sky. And he covers that nicely. You sort of don't need Pulisic then, or you don't need that sort of player.
Exactly, and that's why I mean Pulisic. Chilwell got passes in his one game that he played as well. So I'm kind of hoping Chilwell is kind of like Azpilicueta with more attacking threat, but also more nailed because he's got that left wing spot. So that's why I've kind of gone that way. Does that?
Yeah, no, that makes.
See where I'm going with that?
That makes sense. Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to tackles. There's obviously some other names there. You guys can go through them and see there's a lot of surprise inclusions. But if we go for tackles for defenders, and I'm going to discount the guys who have played very, very few minutes here, there's an obvious name right at the top of tackles that is included in all of our Sky teams, I think, at the moment.
Dallas, isn't it?
Not that one.
No, Robertson.
But very close. No, he is a Leeds player. Yeah,
Ayling, okay.
So Ayling is on 4.54 tackles per game. So that's hitting tier 2 nearly every game. We've got a very, very cheap Palace defender just behind him, who probably won't continue to play.
Mitchell.
Yeah, so if he maintains his spot, 5.2 million, incredible value again.
Yeah.
I don't think he will, though, so that's the worry. And then we come down to Dallas, who we've all got, I think. So that really shows, and I think we've got some questions later about doubling up on the Leeds defence with those bonus numbers. And that's just in one area. These guys have been getting it in other areas as well. I don't think it's bad, to be honest.
No, and also if one of them does get injured, you've got that coverage there, particularly because Leeds are a contender for those Friday night, Monday night games because of their lack of European action.
One other name I want to throw at you that I think is going under the radar actually is Matthew Cash from Aston Villa.
Oh, okay.
He's averaging at the moment 3.04 tackles a game, so he's always on the frame for tackles. He's looked pretty good for them, I think, going forward, attack wise, and he's not that expensive. So he is an alternative, I think, to Konsa. Whereas I do like Konsa; he's obviously got a goal threat, but I don't think he's going to be getting any bonus points very often.
No.
So for 0.4, when you look at the score, for example, Cash has got 17 points and Konsa's got 25. Now, bear in mind, Konsa's got a man of the match and a goal that have buffed him up a little bit there. I think Cash over the course of the season will be the better pick than Konsa. He will pick up those. You got tackles tier 2 against Fulham, and obviously he's got the clean sheets the same as him. So I wouldn't be surprised if that tackles thing continues him, almost like the new Gilbert, but obviously a bit of a better player, I think.
Yeah.
So he's an interesting one.
That is interesting. No, because I don't think we're going to see him in many teams. So he's an intriguing differential as well, especially if he's outscoring Konsa. That's certainly got me thinking. I've got 0.3 in the bank, so we'll have to have a look at that and looking at team news, see how team news goes with my team. But I would definitely bear that in mind. That's a good call, that one.
We'll go to passes for midfielders quickly. There is one name that made the headlines. I think he's only played 45 minutes, but he broke all records for per nightly passes. So I think you might know who that is.
Oh yeah, that's the Liverpool guy. His name escapes me suddenly.
Yeah.
The really famous Liverpool guy.
Thiago.
Thiago, the other one. Yeah, Thiago.
137 passes per 90 is what his has averaged out off of that.
Yeah, that was
45
ridiculous.
minutes. Yeah, so I think we can safely say he will be a lock for it, even on this limited data, just given the nature of who that player is. But let's move down then to some more interesting ones. There's some names there that we always know. Fernandinho, Kovacic, they're all in the high 80s. These guys are going to get passing bonus. Yeah. But one name I think who's probably going a little bit under the radar is Ceballos.
Okay.
He's been playing very well for Arsenal, by all accounts. Okay. He's averaging 80 passes per game. I think he's 8.2, 8.1, something like that. And he does take some set pieces, so he has them for, I know Williams there now, so it's not always going to be that way. But he's one to keep an eye on because he's also in the frame for tackles, the same man of the match. He might be like he's not going to be in Carzola levels, he's certainly not, but it's just something to bear in mind if you didn't want to waste a spot on Aubameyang.
We've all got the likes of Antonio, various different, Rodriguez, Grealish, Barnes, these types of players. One of them gets injured. Arsenal's fixtures suddenly look good for about, a good few game weeks. That's a good shout. That's something to remember. And we've got, by that point, we'll have more data as well. Is he doing that every week? Is he starting?
Yeah, and I mean, for Dani Ceballos, it feels like one of those ones where if you picked him now and left him for the season, he would end up being value. We'd like to chop and change those spots, but there's every chance Grealish, if he plays and he doesn't score or assist, he's probably getting 2 points, right? So over the course of 3 or 4 weeks, Ceballos could comfortably outscore Grealish just for turning up.
Yeah.
It's just whether Grealish can get attacking points, which at the moment you'd heavily back him to do so. But it's just, we just have to bear those sort of things in our mind, I guess. As for tackles for midfielders...
it's got Alan, isn't it? Surely.
I'm going to throw one in just for a laugh. He's played 7 minutes, and therefore the per 90 for tackles for midfielders has thrown him up to 17.56 tackles. You've got him in your Sky team.
Oh, no, hang on.
The one you wanted? Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, exactly. It was 7 minutes. It was 7 minutes, so I don't know what that works out to. Mathematicians will have to help me out here.
He's
but in 7
usually
minutes,
getting tackled himself. What's he doing? He's just had enough.
He must have put in a fair few challenges. 17 per 90. That's not going to stay the same, so ignore that. There wasn't too many in midfield I thought that really stood out to me for tackles consistently. I mean, you've mentioned obviously the likes of Alan, who's played 3 games. He's at 3.82, so you'd expect that to continue. Phillips from Leeds, he's at 4.06.
Yeah.
So that's a consistent turnover of tackles there. It's quite a nice price. You can cover Leeds captain. He hasn't really got passing bonus, but I think in some games he might.
Yeah.
And he's obviously got that man of the match potential because he's a young English player.
Yeah.
So I don't think we should completely discount him. I think he's quite a good option. And that's pretty much the only ones that stood out to me in there. For forwards...
Yeah. So we're looking at shots, aren't we, I guess?
Shots on target. Yeah. There's a guy who's on 3.63. He's only played 29 minutes. However, he's played 4 games. And that is Sebastian Haller, who has the highest shots on target ratio per 90.
Okay.
Interesting, but I won't be going there.
No, because most Antonio is pretty much a lock in most teams.
Yeah, and Antonio is not far behind him on this list.
Okay, that's why.
Yeah. So Jesus is in number 2, but he's only played 1 game and he's obviously injured at the moment. And then we've got everyone's favourite at the moment is Mr. Harry Kane on 2.44 shots. You've mentioned it multiple times now on Sky. He's a darling as long as those shot volumes stay up. And at the moment it's looking pretty good for him, isn't it? Him. And then in 4th place is another striker you currently own, Johnny.
Okay, that's going to be Calvert-Lewin, presumably.
That's Calvert-Lewin. Yeah. He's there. The next guy's Lacazette. Not sure he's an option. And then we go down to Antonio, who many of us have got as a lock in midfield. So those are the stands out at the moment for shots on target. Mitrovic is also in the frame. Bamford's in the frame. A lot of the cheaper strikers then start to hit these tiers. And a lot of the bigger names are actually further down. So maybe these cheaper strikers, everything goes through them, doesn't it? So your Bamfords and your Mitrovic's, your Danny Ings is there, more Pies there. They're going to be getting shots on target bonus in most games, and therefore they are pretty good captains.
That was sort of my thinking with Calvert-Lewin. Although obviously in Sky you can move positions around, But my thinking with Calvert-Lewin as a striker there in, what is he, 9 something or other, is that I can move down to one of those, that sort of a Mapei, Callum Wilson. I'm in that sort of general ballpark for that type of striker if I want them. Obviously, you know, I could get Rodriguez in and bank the money. But as I said, I kind of like having the more expensive one of those two, just in case some injury happens, and I can move down. But yeah, Calvert-Lewin is not a player I think I'm going to keep long term. But he's a slot which could be one of those interesting strikers that emerge and save me the money.
There's a lot of value in that cheap striker spot this season, I think.
Yeah. Okay, well, there's loads of interesting names there, and there was, and some as well for us to consider, perhaps on our overhaul, but also as the sort of who do we get when our player gets injured? Because as we said, in this sort of game, it's best to not, unless you really have to, and you can plan well, you can get those captains. It's best to really only use those transfers to, for a captaincy haul, or when you've got a long-term injury. So you've just got to replace them, and that's why these sort of price points help. I'm still not convinced I've managed it with my team. I like some of the ideas you got with your team, actually, especially keeping money back. I might look at that, and I might think, but yeah, I'm going to go for Pulisic still. I've got my heart set on him. But let's have a look at those fixtures that are coming up. So we've got game week 6, as I said now. Looking at captains as well. So we've got those up on the screen. What are your captaincy thoughts for the Saturday, the Sunday, and the Monday? So we've got 3 captains this week.
Yeah, I mean, for me, De Bruyne is still the standout pick here, and he will, every time De Bruyne is on a game day, he will probably be 1 or 2 in my thoughts nearly every time. So he's certainly there. However, given the fact that he seems to be tired and there's this injury rumor and stuff, I don't know whether to go there. I very much will be relying on the press conference, but then
it's 5:30. If he was at 12:30,
exactly,
no problem, De Bruyne or whatever. But
and also, can we even trust what Pep says? That's the worry as well. You'd like to think if Pep says he's fit, he'll be, he's okay, and then it's versus Arsenal that he would play. But even then, will he come off 60, 70 minutes?
I guess if you want to go nice and safe this day, you know whether Salah's playing or not, definitely, because it's a 12:30 kickoff.
That's my thinking.
Just
at
captain
the moment.
Salah, and he might get you a goal. It depends if Alan's playing. I don't know what sort of setup they're going to have, but you would imagine there'd be at least a goal each for that game.
Yeah, I mean, another one's just to throw James Rodriguez or Calvert-Lewin as captain, given the fact they've got Adrian in goal and they just conceded 7 goals. I wouldn't tell anyone not to do that.
No.
Derbies can throw out strange results, though, can't they?
For me, that game day, at the moment, depending if Pep suddenly says, hey, De Bruyne is completely fine, and he's great, I'm going to play at number 10, and definitely on penalties, and all these types of things that we want to hear. But if he doesn't give me any of that, I'm very tempted by Pulisic against Southampton. He's not going to be well owned. He's not going to be well captained. He's definitely not going to be well captained that day. I think that's an opportunity. Because
good one, yeah.
Because I don't think there's another standout that day. Moving on to Sunday, there's some blokes, and then there's also Spurs. And I don't think Tottenham West Ham are going to be. I mean, it's been said on a lot of pods this week, justifiably, that Tottenham's 2 huge results this season have come against a Manchester United defence that's extremely out of sorts. The West Ham defence is not extremely out of sorts at the moment on current evidence, and also a Southampton team that played a ridiculous high line, which they haven't done since. So looking at that day, I still think with Leicester, Villa, Palace, Brighton, Sheffield United, Fulham, I mean, he's got, and for me it would be Antonio or Kane, I think. One of those 2.
Yeah, I just briefly want to touch on Saturday again, just because Bruno Fernandes away to Newcastle, you'd expect, even though Man United have been dreadful, that is the kind of game where he could also get passing bonus.
Yeah, he's a consideration in my B team, my Fernandes team, definitely. Because all he has to do is get a penalty and then and a bit of bonus, and then hey presto.
You'd imagine even as bad as Man United are, they might have something to 60 to 70% possession in that game. The Sunday one's very tricky. I'm probably just going to go Harry Kane because it it seems like the obvious
Yeah.
move. But yeah, West Ham have been very, very solid, and I'm even considering the likes of. I mean, the fixtures are still bad for the next three, but then they get very good. Masako, I don't know how to
Yeah,
say his
yeah,
name, the left back.
yeah,
He's only 6.5, I think. He's doing very well. Left wing back. He's another option.
yeah, yeah.
Cresswell on free kicks and corners. He's a little bit more, but he's also an option. Not as captain, but just as
No.
a pick.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think there's an obvious name there that's probably going to end up haunting me if he's fit, and that's Jamie Vardy.
Yeah, of course it is. He's going to get 2 penalties. He's not going to get a single shot on target apart from these penalties.
No, and I won't be touching him at all. And I already know he's got a brace.
Yeah, I know. I've had him in my B team pre-overhaul, and I felt dirty every time I got his points because he didn't shoot apart from getting a penalty. And meanwhile, yeah, I felt happier with Kane because he's on penalties. He gets penalties, and he's assisting loads. He's just doing great for Sky with the shots bonus as well. Moving on to Monday. Now, this is where the Sky players and planning comes into focus. We've got to have at least a Leeds, Wolves, Burnley, or West Brom player. So, I think for most people, it's going to be a Wolves player or Dallas at Leeds or Bamford. So, for me, I think I'm going to go Dallas that day rather than Patricio. But I could go either.
I think I'm with you. It's probably going to be Dallas. When I'm at the point where I'm thinking, if I actually had Jimenez for this game, would I captain him over Dallas? And I'm still not sure of the answer. That makes me think that I'm not going to bother with Jimenez for that reason.
No.
I mean, let's be fair. I mean, who's got the highest ceiling? It's probably Jimenez still, because he could score and get a penalty in that game. And I know he doesn't often haul, but it doesn't mean that he can't. And Leeds are very open quite often. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, probably if you give me the choice, I'd go Jimenez. But I feel like you can get away with Dallas in this game. All he's got to do is get some sort of bonus, and it's probably worth it, and match most of the top players that will be picking him as captain. So
I'm just going back to the point about you mentioned about Fernandes as well. It is worth pointing out that I believe the fixture shift around game week, it'll be in the Sky, it'll be game week 9 or so. Spurs fixtures turn for the worse. Manchester United get better. So that is a Kane or Son hopping onto Fernandes is an option, I would say, for many. Which could prompt some people to go Kane and Son, even, if you're feeling particularly maverick. But I think it's a bit too inflexible for me. A bit of a waste of a space, I think.
Yeah, and also maybe we get a look at Cavani and how he fits in, and if he's suddenly, this fantastic striker, then he's could be an option, couldn't he? We just don't know.
So let's move on to the community questions. So Benny Blanco asks, why can't we have 7 places for midfielders? I know the feeling, but which 5 or 4 would you go for? And he suggests KDB, Bruno, Rodriguez, Grealish, Antonio, Barnes, Pulisic, the list goes on. But yeah, which sort of 4 or 5 would you put there?
Okay, well, I mean, he's listed, if I was to list my top, he listed 7 there. Kevin De Bruyne, Bruno, Rodriguez, Grealish, Antonio, Barnes, Pulisic. Well, they would be my exact 7, Benny Blanco, just like you. Yeah. There are other names out there that we've mentioned, Højbjerg and people like that maybe could be worth a look. But yeah, that 7 has got to go into 5 or 4, hasn't it? And it's going to come down to the individual. Some of these names, I feel like you can go other places to cover them, and that's why you kind of have to consider it. So Pulisic, he's great. He's kind of like that, like you say, he's almost like a vanity pick at the moment. When there are a few other Chelsea names you could cover. Barnes, you could technically cover with Castagna, Vardy, other people. I'm not sure you can cover Antonio anywhere else for me. There are a few options, Bowen and with Masoko, we've already said stuff like that. But I think Antonio's so much better than the others that I keep him. Grealish is another one in that Pulisic category for me, where it's a bit vanity. You've got Martinez, Konsa, Cash. You have got other options. James Rodriguez, obviously, you've got Calvert-Lewin, but he takes up a forward spot, so that's another consideration. And Bruno, there isn't really anyone else, so that's what makes me worry about not having Bruno from Man United at the moment. And I may still change my team around to get him, just for the reasons I've mentioned. There's not really any other alternatives. With him, I've kind of just, because Man United are so bad, I've eradicated him from my mind at the moment. And I think as long as you've got a plan to get him back, it's not the worst idea. But ultimately, I don't know. I've got some of them. You've got some of them, Joe. And I wouldn't say any of them are bad, and we very much need a time machine to know who's going to be better and who's the best pick, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, KDB and Antonio are locks. Bruno should be a lock, but that's a head v heart kind of situation, and he's not. Pulisic is the vanity pick, and he's the vanity pick I would go for because he's more expensive than the others, so you can get a cheaper vanity pick. And then I would sort of put Grealish and Barnes in the also rans within that group. And as you said with Rodriguez, I haven't considered him within that because I've got Calvert-Lewin, and I think their points will be very similar. So I think if anything, Calvert-Lewin might even get more if he can carry on his scoring form. Rodriguez, I'd like to see more home and away. I know without fans it not supposedly matters, but he does appear to be scoring much more at Goodison than he is elsewhere. So that's a trend I would like to see more of there. So yeah, KDB and Antonio, and then take your pick, the rest really. But those two definitely for me.
I think it's just we've only had 4 weeks, haven't we? And it's very hard to tell at the moment. They all look very good picks to me. I think you just go with a few of them, and if you've made a mistake, you just have to correct it later on.
I mean, I guess looking at that, just thinking because there's 7 spots there, and then you're looking for 5 or 4 in my case. As you said, look to see where you can get that alternative elsewhere. Barnes, you can get that alternative elsewhere. Grealish, you can. Rodriguez, you can. I'm not sure at the moment you can with Bruno or KDB or Antonio. So that's why I think, yes, that's where my thinking lies there. Can I get an alternative? For reasons unknown, asks what to do with those doubtful players like KDB and Chilwell. Exclude on your own wildcard, or do you exclude them on the overhaul, or use transfers to bring them in? And just risk playing with 9 or 10 players for 1 week. I mean, with KDB, for example, are we ever going to know whether he's going to be fit? And maybe he doesn't play, but then he could be back next week and then essential. So it's a tough question, isn't it?
Every case has to be judged on its own individual merit, because there'll be an example, either way. Pulisic is a good example from this season. I started with him for exactly those reasons, that I thought he'd be back, and he ended up getting a setback, and then I had to use a swap because he played 7 minutes in 4 weeks. I don't think that's the case for Kevin De Bruyne at the moment. All the noise just looks like he's a bit tired. So to me, if he's going to miss this one game, and that is still the noise, I very much want that guy on my team, and I'm not prepared to therefore spend a swap. So I think in his case, at least, I'll be starting with him. There is an argument too, because they're playing home to Arsenal. It depends what your strategy is, but if you start with the likes of Grealish and the money in the bank, then obviously you get the Grealish game, you then get the captain game on the Friday, and then you can swap him to Kevin De Bruyne after that. That's a decent move, I think. So if you are worried about Kevin De Bruyne, I would stick Grealish in his spot for now if you don't own him. I think that's a good move. As for Chilwell, we haven't had any information apart from he was sent home from the camp, hasn't he? So I'm in that position now where I don't know. I'd very much be relying on the information. If it's a wishy-washy, I don't know, he could be 2-3 weeks, then he's out of my team. I'm not going to waste that amount of money on that guy if he's going to be missed 2 or 3 weeks. So it's going to be wait for press conferences, and ultimately the safest play is to err on the side of caution, I think, with most of these guys. Especially when it comes to Pep and Lamps, they're not exactly the most forthcoming of managers for injury information. You
don't know. They do have options. They've both got good big squads. Their B teams are arguably better than many other A teams in the Premier League. Sean asks, what do you think of the Friday and Monday captaincies that are coming up? Do we cover these in the overhaul, or use transfers, or miss out some of those days entirely? So I've got a list of them here, and then you can sort of give your thoughts as we go. So on Monday 19th of October, West Brom v Burnley, Leeds v Wolves. Well, I think we've already covered that one. It's either Dallas or Patricio probably. And then Friday 23rd of October, Villa v Leeds. I think Grealish is probably the standout, but I think Dallas is a good option as well. Monday 26th of October, Brighton v West Brom. This is where Lamptey could come into it. Burnley v Spurs, but then you see that Burnley v Spurs, it's got to be Kane. It's got to be Kane or Son, surely, I would imagine. Friday, October the 30th, Wolves v Palace. That's where if you got Patricio, great. If you got Guita, great. I guess you were talking about some of those moves that you could make to Jimenez. And
so I'll be going Grealish and then to Jimenez for that game probably. But I also have Patricio, so I could just leave it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a good move. And then finally, from what we know, so this is the way it's going to be at the moment. We may not know. I mean, we're lucky at the moment. I feel lucky that we've got about 3 weeks Monday and Friday games coming up, but we may not know until much nearer the time, especially with so many TV fixtures. So Monday, November the 2nd, we're looking ahead here. You got Fulham against West Brom, Leeds v Leicester. So that's where Dallas for me would come into his own. And if I went the Harvey Barnes route, I think that's quite good. Who knows? Jamie Vardy might get a shot. There isn't a penalty by then. He'd be very good. Castagna. I mean, there's lots of good options there.
Yeah, and I mean, his question is, should we cover these to begin with, or should we use transfers? Yeah. And that's the whole game of Sky, isn't it? Yeah. This is all the considerations we're having right now. Is what do we do to cover these guys as best as we can? I think when you've got an overhaul and you've got the fixtures there, you do your best to cover them and plan, because you're given that opportunity later in the season. We are going to have to use swaps because we're not given an overhaul or even the information 3 weeks in advance as to who's playing. So right now, I would say you plan to cover as many of those games as possible. Definitely.
I probably haven't got the best captain each day, but I think I've got the best captain most days, and I've definitely got a captain all days of those. And I think that's the key. I think that's the best thing you can hope for.
Yeah. But using 1 or 2 swaps is not a problem, I would say, over that. I mean, I plan to use at least 1 over that period. So
especially if you're going to be captaining a player. And we saw last season we're getting Pope and Henderson in. Even a goalkeeper transfer can pay off if they're going to be your captain for those days. Just finally, Phantom Mantle asks, Leeds defence double up. I think we've covered that. Or has he gone mad, he says. But yeah,
no, I don't think he has.
No, I don't. I think it is very reasonable. The only reason I sort of haven't done it on the overhaul myself was because I wanted to mix it up a bit. But I still have Concert and Grealish, and I am more keen on mixing it up a bit. Concert could become Lamptey for me, but I think if you are going to double up and you haven't got too many double ups elsewhere, I think it's perfectly reasonable. As you just said there, just chock a block full of bonus, those two.
Yeah, I think that it's only 4 weeks, but in those 4 weeks, those guys have smashed it. So for me, the only worry would be, do those numbers drop off? I don't think you're going to be getting shots tier 2 from the players that often. I know that, is it Dallas that moves into midfield and has got it in one of the games? Yeah, you can't bank on that. So it's really, will their bonus dry up? At the moment, it doesn't look like it will. So by all means, go with them. The moment you start seeing some games where there's 2-point returns and they're nowhere near bonus, then you're going to have to come off, I would have thought, because... Yeah. Well, I mean, Leeds could end up getting quite a number of clean sheets, but at the moment, it doesn't really look that way.
No, at the moment, they are, on the face of the evidence so far, they're Sky Gold, because they're turning up and getting bonus, and they're cheap, and they're enablers, and they're enablers that are getting you extra points. This is great.
Yeah, and also it's worth mentioning there are a lot of, if you go there with the 7 million option of Ailing, there's a whole host of players that are cheaper than that you can switch to, which we haven't had in the past. We've gone through a number of the names there. The Wolves defenders, you might know who the Wolves defender is that's playing by that stage. You got Conser, you got Cash. There's lots of names there. Ben White, Lamptey. So yeah, by all means, start with it and then adjust if you have to, which you may not need to.
Great. So that's all we've got time for today. But next week we're going to be back looking ahead to Gameweek 7 and finding out how our overall teams looked and how they fared. But as I think we said right at the start, really, it's team news is what we want. On the Fantasy Football Scout channel, Neil will be back with Andy on Friday, rounding up all the press conference chat. So do keep an eye on that, and also Neil hopefully will make us aware of any potential news that to look out for with the embargoes. So he won't be able to reveal anything that's in the embargo, but he'll be able to tell you, well, so and so press conference has been embargoed, so things to look out for there. Just before we go, mention the members area. You mentioned all those wonderful per 90 stats earlier. Well, they're all in the members area, as you said. So that's that alone. Just go for that before the overhaul. That will help out. But thanks so much for your questions. But for now, Luke, good luck with your overhaul and good luck with the game week.
Thanks a lot, Joe. You too. And yeah. Again, I'm going to say it again. If my B team outscores my A team, I think I'm just going to stop giving advice. I think and just go with random picks because it's annoying.
I know what happened with me. Right.
Definitely. Catch you later, guys.